Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to CLS Social Studies. Today we're going to be talking about something that we've actually talked about before, but again, it rears its ugly head when we're talking about urbanization, and that's pretty much corruption in the cities. The Gilded Age, a phrase that was coined by Mark Twain, but what exactly was it? Something that is gilded has a thin layer of gold on the outside, but was not necessarily the best thing on the inside. That is what urban life in the big cities during the late 19th century and early 20th century was like. Politics during the Gilded Age was also something of being gilded. On the outside, it could have looked very honest and commendable, but many times underneath that thin layer of gold, there was the political machine. If you recall what we've discussed in previous sections, many of the inhabitants of the big cities in the North were mostly poor immigrants and poor rural Americans who moved into the cities dreaming of the American dream. So what could leaders of these cities do in cases of crime with the depleted police force, trash with a non-existent sanitary system, and overflowing cesspools spilling sewage on the streets and into the rivers without any way to clean it up? Being a mayor in urban America during the Gilded Age was like walking into a tornado. An honest mayor may have been the toughest job in the city. Interests in reform were groups across the city. They started demanding things like clean water, better sewers, better infrastructure, and a transportation system, improved education, and schools, and aid to the poor and sickly. What could an honest mayor do with such limited resources? This is where the political machine rears its ugly head. So I hope you could tell by the way I'm discussing a political machine that it is not a good thing. Political machines arose because there was a lack of democracy in the cities. Mayors had had very limited resources to be able to meet the demands of all the reformers and special interest groups. Mayors could not control the chaos, and political bosses stepped in to wrangle the chaotic herd. Political bosses can be compared to mafia bosses. They were not shy in engaging in illegal and corrupt activities to bring themselves nearly unlimited power in the city. These political bosses would control people and institutions that were called a political machine. The political machine was a political group of people that was controlled by an authoritative boss that worked together to make sure that their candidate was elected into office, because as long as their candidate continued to be mayor, they were still able to run their corrupt machine. Now, the political machine is quite simple. Politics is quite simple. As long as you can keep your constituents happy, you should be able to retain power in your district. Even though the political boss was not an elected official running the show, they also needed to keep the voting public happy to retain their behind-the-scenes authority. Political bosses understood the growing urban population and appealed to the newest, poorest, and most separate part of the urban population, the immigrant. Political machines would sometimes provide soup kitchens to gather support and votes, and leaders of certain neighborhoods were rewarded city jobs because of the influence among the populace. Providing food and aid to the impoverished in order to possibly persuade voters is not illegal. However, many of the political machine endeavors were just that. So you could see here that we talked about there was some widespread voter fraud. They would use bribes, intimidation, violence, and they would stuff the ballot boxes in order to keep their person who they wanted in charge. Now, on the bottom, you can see it says not all activity was illegal. One of the biggest bosses that we covered in class, we're going to just briefly cover him again, was the most notorious political boss of the age, and that was William Marcy Boss Tweed of New York's Tammany Hall. Now, Tammany Hall was a group of Democrats that was famous for extreme political corruption that was ran by Boss Tweed himself. He gave generously to the poor with the handouts of Christmas turkeys and winter coal to prospective supporters. In the process, he would hoodwink the public out of millions of dollars of taxpayer money, which went to Tweed and his associates. And if you remember correctly, that cartoon right there, we're going to discuss Thomas Nast. He was a reformer. He was a muckraker. He drew pictures of Boss Tweed, and that's, believe it or not, how Boss Tweed was captured. Those pictures of Tweed himself right there with the money bag on his head, they went worldwide. So everybody knew who Boss Tweed was when they saw him walking down the street. All right, I'll see you next time.